Good. There we go. So yes, we're recording, and this will be uploaded to the CPA YouTube channel. So I'll send everyone the link out for that as well. I can see a few people have already accessed and viewed last week's workshop, so that's really good. All right, that'll do for me. Over to you. Thanks, Robert. People are still coming in, but I think that's okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Alison, and thank you very much for those, especially those who have come for the second time. That's a good comment on what happened last time. So hopefully this will be a very useful presentation. Now, for those who have just arrived, I'm suggesting go to play along mode. So if you've got an EndNote file, I'd say go and open it up and get it ready. And also open up NVIVO, just so that if you would like, you can play along as we move through this exercise, and you will be that much more familiar with it and its processes by the time you get to doing your actual work. Or maybe this will get the first steps started for you. I'd also like to acknowledge the land on which I'm working at the moment. I'm on Widjabul Waibul land of the Bundjalung Nation, so operating out of Lismore. It's a place that is absolutely beautiful and rich in Aboriginal culture, so I acknowledge that, pay my respects to Aboriginal persons in this area and beyond. And I would hope that the work that we do as researchers is something that contributes to justice throughout our country and for those who have suffered terribly. Oh, wrong way. Okay, now there are two things I'm going to work towards achieving today. The first one is to demonstrate how to analyze literature using NVIVO. And the second part, which is integral to that, is how you might do content analysis. So one is looking at the end product we're trying to produce, our literature review, and the other one is looking at a method that we will use. Now, I'm not going to go into the theory of content analysis to any great depth. So this will be a far more practical approach to how it will be done. But I'm hoping that at the end of this, you'll feel a little bit more comfortable in applying a method, seeing how it might be used for content analysis. And that by the end of it, you'll have some very practical tips on how you can use NVIVO and cut down some of the workload of your literature review. But more than that, how to keep it managed, and so that at the end of it, you can say with great certainty, the conclusions I have drawn are valid and reliable because I have worked at it systematically, and you can show a supervisor or some sort of auditor that you have followed through a rigorous process in order to draw your conclusions. Now, as I said last week, I'm not the expert on NVIVO. I'm very much the practitioner, been working with it for a long time. If you have questions, please make sure that you make yourself heard, interrupt my flow of speech. I will find it again if what I was saying was important. So make sure you ask your questions. I want this to be a practical session. So that will mean you need to let me know what it is that you need to get out of it. Or if I've not been clear in what I've said, ask me to repeat myself or say it differently. So please see what you can do to get some practical learning out of this. If you've just joined in the last minute or two, my recommendation is to open NVIVO, just so you can play along and become familiar with it. And also open your EndNote with an EndNote file. Now, the other thing to watch, I will be swapping between screens, between the PowerPoint screen and my NVIVO screen. So if I forget to share the right screen, please, again, just interrupt me so that I can catch that up. Now, my recommendation is, and again, you will need to, at any point, you will probably need to check with the supervisor for those students who are working through this session. But I would recommend considering a systematic literature review. which means having a very precise set of rules, a very clear protocol on how you are going to go about your literature review. Now that will start with looking at what theory needs to be addressed and what are the assumptions and how will that guide your literature review. I'm going to skip through a lot of that because we will be approaching our literature reviews from a range of ontologies, epistemologies, methodologies. But please make sure you think it through, because the way that you approach your literature review, theoretically or methodologically, is going to impact the way that you do your literature review and the way that you interpret your results. Now, excuse me. Turning on my fan and it's warming up in here. Okay, this is just an example of a literature review I undertook a number of years ago. It's a little bit crazy in the numbers, but I was looking at what was already known about attitudes to reproductive cloning in Australia. And there were specific dates between which it was important to understand those attitudes. So the start date for me was January 1997. So just prior to the announcement of Dolly the sheep, and through to the end of 2006, which was just after the second public policy event in Australian politics. So I knew the topic and I knew the time limits from which I wanted to draw my data or my literature. I had to think about what are the sources I'm going to access. Do I need to just draw on academic literature? But having read academic literature and seen some of the other things, I realized I need to access a wider range of data sources. So for me, it was academic literature and the non-academic literature as well. I was able to record what the key words that I used in my searches were. I also acknowledged in the writing of my literature review that my resources were limited by, I didn't say limited by, but it was within the scope of the Southern Cross University Library that I did my searching. Language was English. Now, there were some articles in Spanish and Slovenian and whatever, but my lit review was restricted to Australian literature. And then specifically the publication dates, as I mentioned. So think about a systematic review. This way, you will know that you have captured all of the available information specified by those criteria, so that you can, at the end of it, say, having studied this specific set of literature, I have drawn these conclusions, or these were my findings, or this is the gap in the literature that has been identified. Now, when that was operationalized, when I actually turned it into a pile of papers and books to read, I went through the different databases that I was able to access through the university and through Google and other sources, and tabulated it. So it's there on the right. I got a little bit carried away, starting off with about 7,000 sources. If you're doing honours, there's no way you're going to have the time for that. If you're doing your PhD, hopefully you're more sane than to want to do that. But that was the approach I took. And as you'll see, things were compiled and then systematically dealt with. First, the literature was found according to the search criteria and then screened by the title. So look at the title, get rid of some. Then having identified, here was 276 by title, I then looked at their abstract and that reduced it to a pool of 88. I then started looking at the articles themselves and got them down to 17. And of those 17, which ones dealt with Australian attitudes? And I got from 7,000 down to 1. But I knew I had everything that was covered, except there was some other literature that I found available. Over here's 16 and brought it in. Hello, Karen. You'll have to put your hand up more noisily, but.
I was just wondering, so you said you used Google as well, but I can only see ProQuest and EBSCO.
Yep, it's my other searches.
Oh,
There
okay.
were some other companies that were engaged in surveying Australian attitudes and taking on government contracts to poll people. So those sorts of things were included in my literature review. That may not be relevant to yours, but consider what are the criteria for you to include literature in your review. Will it strictly be academic sources or not?
I watched one of the RR Clan courses on literature review the other day, and she said the same thing, to use Google as well and to try and find government reports.
Yes. For some people, that won't be what they're after, but being systematic means noting down exactly what it is that you did and what you didn't do as well.
Thank you.
And then that way, at the end, you're able to justify the conclusions that you've drawn, and you're able to stand before a supervisor, an auditor, or a reviewer and say, this is what it was done. Something that was pointed out to me recently was when we do our studies, and it applies to literature reviews as well, nobody's really going to go through all the data and say, yes, you're correct or you're incorrect in the conclusions that you have drawn. But what they can do, and are most likely to do if they really want to investigate further, is to look at your process. Does your process make sense? Is it in line with current methodology? Where you have altered it, have you noted that and given justification for any changes or variations that you have made? Therefore, based on the way that you have approached your process, a reviewer or other person will be able to say, yes, we will agree and support the conclusions that you have come to. So, work through your process rather clearly and rather well. Now, we still haven't gotten to NVIVO. So we need to start thinking about, so what do? We collect all our data together. I really recommend working with EndNote. Now, NVIVO is part of a stable of software applications that includes an application called Citavi. I've not used Citavi myself, but it's something that the NVIVO company Lingard is pushing. For the present time, at least, Southern Cross University and many other universities are using EndNote as their bibliographic software. So I recommend using that. It works beautifully for what we need for our literature review. And that's what I've used in the development of my literature review. So use your EndNote library. Save your documents. When you do your searches, as much as you can, use the automatic citation function of the database that you're drawing upon, so that will automatically produce, say, a RIS file, a .ris. It will upload automatically into EndNote, and then you don't have to go and type extra stuff unless you really want to. I then recommend going back to, say, it's a PDF of that article, getting a copy of that and uploading that into your EndNote file as well. So if you found this article by Smith and Jones 2018, get, say, ProQuest to give you the citation automatically as a RIS file, open it into EndNote, then go and download a copy of the PDF, have a folder that you put all of the relevant literature into, and save that next to your EndNote file. And in EndNote, where you've got Smith and Jones 2018, attach that PDF. Now, I have a copy of one of my EndNote folders here. Okay, I shall stop sharing and I shall reshare. Now, this is an EndNote folder that I'm working with at the moment for a literature review. And you will see that I've got attachments next to nearly every reference that I save. As much as you can, save your your references there, because when it comes to NVIVO, we can get them pulled automatically into our project in NVIVO. And for those where there is no attachment possible for whatever reason, we've got some workarounds that we can use there as well. Okay. Good. So what we will do is sort our EndNote library, which has been sorted and filtered by abstract and contains articles that we think we want to include in our literature review. What we will then do is export the references and then bring them into NVIVO. So let me go back to my EndNote folder and I'll show you what we do. Okay, I want to take, say, those ones and copy them into my NVIVO file, my NVIVO project. Now there are 69 of them here, as you can see. So previously I have imported them, but just for this exercise, these are the ones I'm going to pretend to do now. I am going to export them. Good. Where are we going? Export. Now, I want to export them as XML.
Robert, we're not seeing your screen at the moment.
Thank you for that reminder.
That's okay.
Okay, have you got it now?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you have. Okay.
Right.
So I highlighted the ones that I want to import. I've gone to File and said Export from EndNote. And this is the panel that comes up. So my project, I'm looking at labyrinth walking. Now, it came up, the default position was it came up save as a text file. I don't want that. I want to change that to be save as an .xml. So we are going to export this as an XML. Each one is in the XML format. And then I will say save. And it will produce it already exists, yes, because I've already done this. That's okay. So it's going to produce a library of those, of all those individual bibliographic notes for me. Now I'm going to go to my labyrinth project. When you open NVIVO for the first time, go to new project and open it and give it the information it's asking. It'll want a title. It'll want to know if you want every little keystroke saved. I recommend saying no. You will blow out your hard drive very quickly if you save every little keystroke. For some research projects, that might be important, but I am sure it won't be for your literature review. Open a new project and then start to fill it in. Now, here's one that I've already been working on. Okay. What we will do here is we would start, okay, let's do a new one. Here we're going to go. We're going to import items. We'll import from EndNote. And here is where all of the EndNote, oh, hold on, you're not seeing my screen, are you?
Sorry, yes, we are
Oh,
seeing
you
your
are.
screen.
Good. I'm just,
Yeah,
sorry,
we're following
just
along.
double checking.
Yeah.
Okay, so my labyrinth library is the one that I will double click and tell it to open, or click here and say open. Now I've already done that. What happens when you import it is that you get all of these files brought in. So here are all the PDFs that I have saved in my EndNote library. So they are there automatically. Plus, it has created a class of file called references, and it does this automatically for us. So each reference has all of this metadata that has just been pulled in automatically from EndNote. So when you have a look in your...
Can I ask another question? Sorry.
Yeah.
When you imported those, there was a choices of EndNote and Mendeley, and so there's a question from Caitlin in the chat box. Can you do it with Zotero too? Zotero.
Yes, you can. There's a whole range of databases and formats that can be used for import.
Great, thank you.
NVIVO is actually very, very, very flexible in the way that you can import data. So yeah, Zotero will be fine. Just make sure you use the .xml formatting.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
I've now got my chat box open, so I'll try and keep an eye on that. So my apologies. Okay, so we've got all the metadata from EndNote, so that's there as well. Now, in your EndNote file, there will be things like notes and references, maybe abstracts saved as well. They get saved in under memos. So let's just open one up here. Oh, what did that do? Oh, my page just skipped into something else. Okay, you've got the right one. Here are the keywords and the notes and the things that were saved with one of the references. So here's another one. There's the abstract that was saved in EndNote. So all of those things have been brought into the NVIVO project. So the document itself, the metadata, and also the notes, the abstract, the research notes, all those extra bits that you may have added or were simply included automatically when you created your individual EndNote references. That's a lot of stuff. It's actually really simple once it comes in, and depending on how many references you are importing, it could be worth going and, getting a glass of water and coming back. It will take quite a little bit of time for NVIVO to import your bibliographic data and arrange it and set up all the classifications as well. So it can take a little bit of time, but just allow it to do that. There'll be a little green bar across the bottom of your screen that'll show you the progress as it's importing. So if it's slow, don't worry, it just means it's thinking, and you've probably got a lot of data there as well. Are there any questions at this point? Have I lost many people yet? No, I'll have to keep trying. But Karen's come on the screen. That means you've got a question.
Well, you haven't lost me, but I discovered that I don't have EndNote and I tried to download it and I couldn't. So I'm just watching, and I'll have to watch the recording.
You will still be able to do stuff. Okay, you'll still be able to do some practical things in this session. I will show you what that is in a few minutes' time.
No worries. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to swap back to my PowerPoint slide. Okay, so we've covered all of that, all the things that are brought in, so that's a good thing. Now, when we get a new NVIVO project, the thing will be empty. There will be nothing of value in there other than all the tools. So I am making a range of suggestions of what you can do to set yourself up for success for your project. Now, this applies to almost any research project you are engaging in, but specifically, there are a few things that I suggest for literature review. Now, I'm just going to work through these one by one, show you what I've got set up on my screen, and you can try doing it yourself as you hear what these things are. I suggest setting up a general folder for codes, and then there are 3 codes that I'm suggesting that you include. Now, how do we set up a folder? On the NVIVO page, again, let me swap my screen. On your NVIVO page, over on the navigation pane, you will see that we have coding down here on the left. What I have done is gone into codes. I have right-clicked and said create a folder. And then I've created this folder called general. So I'll just create just a dummy folder called test. I'm going to give it a description. This folder is for testing ideas. So always create a description. It can be a little bit annoying at start. You think, I know exactly what I'm doing. But when you come back later on in your project, oh, why was I doing this? You'll probably regret at some point that you haven't always given descriptions. And you'll see that's a common mistake that I make throughout. So here we are. Here is a folder called test, and we can create other codes and put them in. So here's the one I made earlier called general. Now, when I open general, you'll see there are some other codes that I have made. So this is a folder where we group things together. My initial suggestion is put a go find code in place so that when you need to go and have a look at what's this about, it's so that where there are ideas for further investigation and research, you've just made a note of it. So you're reading through a paper, you think, oh, that's an interesting idea I haven't thought about, but that's not what I'm doing at the moment. So you highlight it, click the code go find, it'll be saved there, you can go back and check it later. I also use this one for when I come across a reference when I'm reading, I will code it as go find, and later on I can go and check out that reference later. It just saves me getting out of the flow of my work. So I'm reading for a specific purpose. Oh, here's something I'm thinking of. Not going to worry about it now. I'll just call it go find, and I'll go find it later. I'll show you how to use it later, but set up the folder for general, set up a code called go find. There's another one that I think is really important for your literature review, also for your research project proper, is one called quotations. So look, I'll right click on it, go down to code properties, and you can see I've got a description there as well. Use it for outstanding quotations that you think, wow, this is really good. I don't want to lose this. I'm going to come back to this later when I'm writing up this section. Or later on, you might come back to it and say, well, actually, it wasn't so good after all. And then you delete it, but you haven't lost it. So in your generals folder, set up a code for quotations, and also one for definitions. So the thing that you were looking at will be defined in so many different ways throughout the literature. But you will find it useful to have the definitions just highlighted and available in one place so that you can go back and review them later as a way of helping you to write the definition that you will be using, or as a way of contrasting the different definitions that have been used in the literature. So they're my suggestions to start with. What have we got? Go find quotations and definitions. Okay, you'll see that I've also created another two. One is called on topic. Because we have brought all of these documents into our project that have been screened by title and now by abstract, we may discover that when we read through it, that it's actually not relevant to us. So not everything that looks good when we read the abstract is going to be useful when we read it through. So I had this other code called on topic that I use, and I'll show you how that's used a little bit later, but it's a good thing to create. Don't worry about children, that's specific for my project. I'll explain that a little bit later as well. Okay, create folders in coding for each phase of analysis. Just checking, I'm still showing you the right screen. Very good. Okay. I'm going to undertake a content analysis with my literature. I'm going to do it in 4 steps. The first step is I'm going to manage my sources. The second phase, I'm going to do an initial coding. In the third stage, I'm going to start to abstract the data. I'm going to start grouping it and making a hierarchy of codes that's going to be, hopefully make sense of the data that I'm looking at within my literature. And then I'm going to go through a final phase of condensing it all so that it makes sense and starts to tell the story that I think needs to be told from my literature. Now, it's going to look fairly linear when it's put down like that, but it will be a bit of an iterative process. And it may be that having come out at phase 4, you think, no, I really need to go and review this again. So you can go back and revisit things. But this will help systematize the way that you approach your review. So create folders for each phase of analysis. So to create the folder, remember you go to codes, right click and create a new folder. Now, phase 1, I'm going to right click, go to folder properties. And you'll see that I'm suggesting that in phase 1, I read through my literature, I make notes on the documents, and I create memos. So it's just a little bit of a guide to remind me what I'm trying to achieve in a practical sense. In phase 2, I'm going to click on that, right click, not right click, right click, folder properties. I'm going to sample and code. I'm going to classify, which I'll explain, and start with some of these other things that will be important ongoing.
Aaron, did you want to ask Robert a question there?
Well, I did want to, thank you, but I had misspelt phase and I couldn't work out how to change it. But then when he went into folder properties, then I found that I could do it there.
All
that
right.
is such a practical question. Thank you. Okay, what happens if you're not happy with what you've written? You go to properties. Now, there are properties for projects, for folders, for codes, for all the different things that we have here will all have properties, and they will all operate in a similar way. So if you didn't spell phase properly, or you decided you want to rename it, just go in and edit it. That will be fine. So phase 3, creating the hierarchy, going a little bit further. Phase 4, rearranging, visualizing, and detailing. So they're the 4 phases that I'm going through. Now, depending on what method you are going to apply in your literature review, it might look a little bit different. The overall pattern I expect will be the same. The processes will be similar, but it might vary a little bit. But consider setting this up. This is the way that you demonstrate to someone else that you are applying rigor to the process that you are undertaking. Now, what I'm also suggesting is that if you are applying a framework from above, now when you approach your literature review, you may be looking at what emerges from my literature, in which case you are open coding. You're just finding what's there of interest. And so you'll develop your coding framework from the literature itself, or you may be imposing a framework on your data, in which case you can go into initial coding and start creating codes automatically, creating them prior to actually engaging with the coding process.
There's a request to just, if you could show those 3 steps again, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep, okay, I'll just swap screens.
Thank you.
Yeah, just those sub steps under number 3. I just managed to miss them.
Oh, that's so okay.
In your
I misunderstood the question. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm getting dizzy from all the screen swapping. Here we go. Number 3.
Yep, fantastic.
Create the
Oh,
hierarchy.
I see.
Okay, a quick way to do this is do a function and print screen, and you just get the screenshot that you can read through later if that's useful or things are moving quickly for you. Okay, so that was 3, in which case I'll show 4 again as well. Rearrange, visualize, and continue on the detail.
Great. Thanks for that, Robert.
So that's the process that I'm following through. As I said, yours may vary a little bit, but the pattern of the way that you approach it, I expect will be the same. Now, I've suggested that we create some memos as well. So if we go down here to notes, we will see that there are memos. Now, I'll open that up and you'll see I've gone right click and created a new memo folder called General. So here is where I just put a whole range of ideas and things. One is I've created a memo wherein I'm just recording some of my approach to my literature review. So if I get distracted or the supervisor puts me on the spot and I can't think clearly, it's all right, I've got it written down here. So for me, my literature review is going to address just these 3 questions. They're not my research questions, but they're the questions for my literature review that will contribute to understanding of background for my research question. It's something very important to consider before you get into your literature review is what will be the coding unit. Are you going to look at a whole sentence or a whole paragraph or a whole page? The one I often use is a unit of meaning, which is a flexible amount of text.
Yes.
But it conveys the meaning of the idea that I'm investigating. So record those sorts of things in memos. So the general folder.
I don't want to remove your device, but
I'll remove it, it's not working, and we'll plug it back.
Are you right, Karen?
Oh, sorry, I've got someone trying to help me with my headphones and she's unmuted me.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry.
I suggest also, as a matter of good research technique, that you have a reflections folder where you include reflections, things that you think about as you're going along. So, what's that not working for me? Oh, I've got to hit edit. And as I am analyzing the data, I am thinking that the idea of cognitive improvement might be of importance. I'll record the things there that I'm thinking as I go along. Some will be useful and I'll come back to them later and they'll remind me of what I need to give emphasis to. Others I'll discover actually were just important at the time, but overall aren't going to be helpful. But create memos as well as you go along through each of the steps. And I suggest too that it would be good to have a folder for your supervisor in meetings, things that you want to raise with your supervisor, feedback that you get back from your supervisor. You may have another system in place that is useful to you, but this is a tool that might be helpful. Yes, Karen.
So, Robert, I was just wondering what you're connecting these to. So you're saying reflections, is that being connected to anything particular in there, or is that just a general reflection?
Oh, okay, complicated question. It's a good question, but at the moment it's disconnected. This is part of the preparatory work.
Right.
So I'm suggesting setting up these folders and codes as a way of setting yourself up. Now, later on, you may start connecting them to other things. So I can go through my memos at a later date and I can code them. If there's something that I need to formalize as far as my process goes, I can then go through and analyze the memos that I've made. So my field notes might get put in here. And I can go through and analyze them, and then they start connecting to other places. At this point, set yourself up for success. If there are other memos, I suggest creating them as well. Are there any other questions before I move on from this part of setup? Nope. Okay. Okay, so that's what we've done. Oh. Now, establishing your protocol. Think about what is going to shape your review and what methodological issues there are for your analysis. So that's something I mentioned a little bit earlier, but don't think I'm just going to go in there and read stuff and come up with a couple of good answers. Think about how this fits in with your overall project and how it will be consistent with your overall project as well, which is something to discuss with your supervisor, and again, in light of the literature and the discipline in which you're working. Oh, keep going the wrong way. As you read through your literature, you will also find it may be important to classify it. Now, the literature has been brought in and classified as a reference, but there may be some other details that will also be important. So as you read through the papers, you will think, there's something else I need to do here to classify it. Now, let me show you an example. Okay, I'm going back to my files. We'll pull out this one here. So I've read through this. It's a short bit of writing, but it's on topic for me. But what I want to do is make a note of what the type of person was who was engaged in this study. So for me, looking at the idea of walking a labyrinth, it's sort of like a maze, but it's something that people say is really good for your blood pressure or for your creativity or for reducing stress. So a whole range of things. I'm trying to see, so what do we know about it? But who is walking it? Is it people in a prison? Is it people at a conference? Is it people in a workplace? And I'd like to know that. So what I'm doing, okay, I will click here on my references. I've got file classification. I've got a reference here. And when I open it up, there's all my metadata. But what I would like to know is, what are the ages of the persons who are engaged with it? Or what is their occupation? What is the sex of the person? And I'd also like to know, what is the company, what is the country that's being used? So I want to add in an extra classification. So I right click on reference. I want to give it a new attribute. So this class of document called a reference can also be classified according to the attribute of country. Give it a description. Study undertaken. Now, a country, it could be Australia, it could be the US, it could be Canada, anywhere. So I need to add the different values. So there's the UK. I know that they're in some of the literature for my reading. Canada. Oh, gee. Canada. And of course, Oz. So I now have some different options. When I go down to the bottom, I'll see that there's an extra way to classify the reference that I'm working with. So I go back to my file. This one here, I go to its properties. Has it been classified? I look at its attribute values. country hasn't been specified. This one is in Australia. I know it deals with a mixed group. It's working with students and it's of mixed ages. So now I have classified it and added a whole lot more information about that particular reference for when I go back and do my analysis. Are there any questions at this point? There's a bit of detail that we're diving into here.
Would you mind going back, Robert, and just showing us how to assign that again? I got as far as new attribute, and then I think I was on general while you were putting in values.
Okay. Have you established a new attribute?
So I've got file, classifications, and then reference underneath.
Okay, so click on right click. Right click is the most useful thing. For those who have got Apples, hopefully there's a right click function, or it'll be a little bit trickier for Apple users or Mac users. But reference, new attribute, and the new attribute might be, I don't know, I'll just make up something fanciful.
Country's fine. I'll use it.
And then specify some of the values. So I know the red and green are going to be.
So how did you, sorry, how do you get that to open? I can see not applicable there.
Can you see general and value?
Values, yes. So how did you get to type in under?
Values, add.
Oh, so add doesn't, yes, I can see that when you click on add, it works, but it didn't highlight, so I didn't think it was accessible online.
Okay. Sometimes, look, it's such a big program, and the more data that you add into it, the slower it might run on your computer. So sometimes you just need to give it a second to operate. The other tip for engaging with NVIVO is to click on the icon rather than the title of the thing that you are wanting to work with. So clicking on the little icon is usually better. Now, where we've got buttons like add and sort, yeah, that's okay. But generally, where there's an icon, right click on that for best results. So have you got your values sorted now, Karen? Excellent. Okay. So, swapping pages again. What we need to do now is go back and take notice of the files that we're working with, being aware that some may be useful, some may not be. We're going to have to deal with that. But then working at how we are actually going to start engaging with individual documents as we encounter them. So first thing, note that we have internal files and external files. You'll see here on my project, I've got file classifications, my references, and then externals. And when you look down at the bottom under my list view, it says 59 items, but actually it was 69 that I imported. That's because 10 of them didn't have attachments. They might have been articles that I couldn't access a PDF for, or they were quite old and no PDF was available, or maybe it was a book, in which case I can't actually go and put a book into my NVIVO project. So it will be listed as being an external file. So just be aware, if you're looking in your files and thinking, hold on, I imported 50, but I've only got 40 showing up, make sure you go and check in externals. Now, when it comes to dealing with our files, our regular ones with editable text, let's go for this one. I'll just open one up here at random. Okay, so this is my project. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to create, I'm going to do some coding. So the power of labyrinths lies in their simplicity, a winding, curvy path. Okay, well, let's pretend that that's going to be useful for me. What I will do is highlight it. Editable text is easy. Highlight it. And then I've got all these options open to me when I right click. I can select a code. I can code NVIVO, uncode, create an annotation, whole range of things. Now, code selection is what you will use a lot of as you start. That's when you make up the title for a new code. Code NVIVO is when you say the text that I have highlighted will also be the title for the code. So this would be very unwieldy if I use this one, because that whole sentence would become a title. So I'm definitely not going to do that. If I discover that something was already coded and I no longer want it coded, then same process, just in reverse, highlight and uncode. Create an annotation. I'm thinking, yeah, there's something really useful here that I need to take a note of. So here is an interesting description. And that annotation will just travel with this text. So I can put notes. It's like scribbling in the margins. So I can do that as well. So editable text, easy to work with. If you've got a large piece of text, say you've downloaded someone's thesis that's relevant to your literature review, but it's a huge amount of data to have to wade through, you might go through and find, say, the couple of pages that are relevant to what you're doing, highlighting them and noting them as relevant. So they've got a code called relevant, so that you can find it very easily in the future. You just look for the thing marked relevant, and then you can go through that in more detail. Alternatively, go and, if you've got access to a printer, just print out a page of it, turn it into a PDF, and then re-import that in place of this whole 400-page document. But what happens when you've got a book or non-editable text? If you've got a book, let's go to externals. This is, which was a Walking Sacred Path. This is the classic text by the woman who started an interest in modern labyrinths. I can't really code it, but what I can do is edit the page next to it and either cut and paste some text into it, or I can just type in nodes or relevant data. So I can type that, and then I can also go and code this as well. So even if I can't import a book because of its text, then I can make some notes so that I have something that is editable and that I can use. There's also the case of old documents which are included in databases that are with ineditable text. So I've just opened this one up here that I know is not editable text. It's a piece of it's a PDF or a JPEG or something that I can't actually use. So I can't highlight the text, which is a real nuisance. But if I treat it as a picture, instead of using this as text for manipulation, I treat it as a picture. I can say, okay, this is an interesting piece of text here that I want to highlight. Let's use that. And I've lost it. So now I want to code this piece of text. And I want to say that this let's just give it a general code. We'll call it definition. Oops, what am I doing? Just use the definition that's already there. Just code it to definition. So here I haven't highlighted text. I've treated it as a picture. I've highlighted a region, and then I've just gone through the same process. So I'm able to go and make codes where there is editable text. That's the easiest prospect. If there is a huge amount of complex text, I can isolate the bit of text that I want, or I can simply substitute it for, say, a PDF of a smaller chunk. Where it's, say, a book, I can make notes in the external files by clicking on edit. Or if it's non-editable, then I can simply go and treat it as a picture, but still code it the same way. So that's how we're going to deal with the different types of data that we have actually imported. Again, a big chunk. Are there any questions that you might have at this point before I move on?
Robert, it might not be a question for the moment, but later. So if I've pulled in, say, 150 documents,
Yep.
then in a month's time, I find another 6 great documents and I add those to EndNote.
Yep.
What do I do there?
Okay, exactly the same process you did to start. Go back to EndNote.
Yep.
Highlight the exact ones that you want to import.
The new
Export
one.
them from EndNote as an XML. Go back to data in NVIVO and say I want to import these new bibliographic references.
Okay, and it will just add it to my existing.
Yes, it will ask if you want to create new classifications of things. Well, you wanted to bring all that in, but you don't need it to create a new classification because they're all references anyhow. So
Yep.
that's a function that's useful for different types of data, but for your literature reviews, I doubt that will be useful.
Okay.
And also you might find that, oh, accidentally, I've repeated one of the references that's already in. And NVIVO will show that.
Okay.
And
So
if,
it's
yeah, so you can say, no, don't import the duplicates. But if it is imported, it will be noted that it's Smith and Jones, and in brackets it'll say number 2, where you just go through and delete it.
okay. Cool.
So
Thank you.
exactly the same process, so you can add to it later. Now keep in mind, I've suggested that you have a code for go and find. So that suggests, yeah, it's likely that you're going to add to it over time as well.
Okay. So
Robert,
Okay.
could you go back to your PowerPoint slide that mentioned ontology and epistemology, please?
Oh,
That was it.
oh, that one?
Yeah, we went through this fairly quickly and I just... Okay, so these aren't matters specifically to do with NVIVO, are they?
No, no. NVIVO is a tool that you will apply within the context of your overarching theories or of your underpinning theories.
Okay. Okay, so this is something we've worked out before we even get to NVIVO.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm always impressed when somebody asks about ontology, so thank you. I think it's an underdeveloped area for consideration.
It's my favorite area.
Oh, good. Okay. We'll have a conversation another time.
Love to.
Okay, so that's all the introductory stuff. I mean, there's a heck of a lot more. So what I'd like to do is, first remember which page you're actually looking at. Okay. What we have been doing is part of our content analysis, but it's not the detailed part. This is just the setup, making sure that we have our data set organized and filtered as best we can, and setting up our NVIVO project initially for for success, getting some codes and folders and things in place, and just being aware of how we might do our coding. So let me go back to my NVIVO page. Hopefully no one's getting whiplash. Oh, that was the wrong page. Good, there we go. Okay. Phase one is manage our sources. Phase one is where we go through and we read. So there isn't going to be much happening here in the way of setting up codes. What we will do here is go through our files, so back up the data into files. I'm just opening up this first one. And I'm going to have a read of this. As you can see, I've already highlighted some things here. So I'm going to have a read. Are there any notes that I need to make, any annotations? Yes, I've already made an annotation. There was no difference compared with the controls in this. It's certainly not a high level piece of writing that's here, but it's useful for my purposes. What I need to do is classify this document, which I have done. So I go to PDF properties, have a look at the attributes. Oh, no, I haven't. So this was a group of, it was a mixed group. Adults, physiotherapists, I didn't know the country at the time. So go through, do the classification, make any notes, and just read and check that this is actually one that I want. So this one is on topic for me. Go back over to the left, back over to the navigation plan, navigation pane. See here under sets, this is a useful function that we have in NVIVO. We can set up static sets. So whatever we drop into our set stays in our set. But I want to set up a dynamic set. So I'm right-clicking, creating a new dynamic set. I'm calling it on topic and general, which I've already done. So when I go and tell NVIVO that this document is on topic, it will automatically put it in this folder for me. So I don't have to keep moving things into the folder. So let me show you how that's done. Go back to my files. Here's one that I haven't done yet, a commentary. I am going to code the whole PDF. So I've right-clicked on the title of the file, code the whole PDF, and it's going to say, are you really sure you want to do this? I'm going to say, yep. And I've got a code already made called on topic. So I click on that one because I set this one up earlier. Go down to the bottom, code selection on topic. And you'll see now that there is a code assigned here. So there is one code that is set against this, this particular PDF. And there are 3 references there, don't worry about that. There's one there. And when I come back down to have a look at my dynamic set of on topic, this has been added in automatically. Now, right-click and go to Dynamic Set Properties. I created this and said that I wanted to be a code-defined, sorry, the sugar levels are dropping. I want this dynamic set to be defined by items that are coded to being on topic. So I said code to, and I want to select an item. and I went and I opened my codes, and I went to general, and I clicked on topic and hit OK. So anytime I code something as on topic, it will be brought down into this set. So later on, if I discover that actually half of the documents I've brought in are useful to me, then I've simply got a nice listing of them there in the dynamic set that I can just access very easily without all the rest of the noise. So up here in the top, where all my files are, I've got 59 files. But when I come down to my dynamic set of what's on topic, then I might find that I've got 40 of them, and the other 19 are just noise. I don't have to worry about them anymore. And this dynamic set is created automatically for me. So it just gives me an automatic aggregation of files, and it's very, very convenient. Now, I've created another one for children because the interest of my literature review here is to look at references that are on topic, and also deal specifically with, so what have we learned about how this operates with children? So I've created another one here. I'll right click, look at its properties. This one is activated when I've used that children code. Okay, that's a whole lot of stuff that I've talked about. Do you have any questions for me at this point? Hi, Karen.
You'll have to unmute. Yeah.
Sorry. Is it a requirement that you have something in the project before you can create a dynamic set? Like you're actually...
No.
I just tried to...
Oh, sorry. Okay, create your initial code, just one code.
Right.
So go into code, go over to the bottom of the screen. Okay, I'll just show you.
I can go in general.
Okay.
I've got your go find and on topic.
Okay, yep. Say right click at the bottom and in the spare patch at the bottom and hit new code.
Right.
So then you just type in the name of the code, give it a description, and hit OK. Now you've got the criterion by which you can define your dynamic set.
Okay.
Now, this is NVIVO. NVIVO has lots of ways to do the same thing. We just created a code by right-clicking new code at the bottom of the page. We could have gone up to the top to the menu ribbon to create. We hit create, and then we can use this button here to create code using our mouse. So create, code, and exactly the same process. Give it a name, give it a description. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. I just closed down all the documents and things that I had open so that you can see my files more clearly. So here is the icon showing me it's a PDF. That's the title that it had in EndNote that's just been brought in. So far, there have been 16 codes against it. 10 pieces of text have been modified. It's last modified on the 28th by me. I set my initials up in the project when I started. It's classified as a reference. And then I've given it a green spot. This one has a yellow spot. Now, what I've done, again, right click, go down to color, and I'm going to change yellow to green to signify that I finished coding it. I haven't really, but for the exercise. So it's just another useful tool. I'm going to code this one as yellow, saying I haven't finished coding that yet. And then I can come back to it later, finish my coding, turn it green. So it's just a simple visual way of showing that I'm working my way through this. So managing sources, phase one. We've brought in our documents, we read through them, we make our notes, we scribble on them, we classify them, and I suggest we move them into our dynamic set. In phase two, we start to do our coding. So phase two, you'll notice there are no codes here. Phase one is there just as a reminder. Phase two is when we start to go through them and say, so what do we find here that's of use? So I've opened up one of my files here. Here's something, labyrinths can be found in school playgrounds, have complicated designs. Okay, I'm going to pretend that that is useful for me. Actually, I'm just going to demonstrate complicated design. Highlight that, right click, code NVIVO. It has just automatically created a code called complicated design. So when I open up codes, there it is. It's done that automatically. I didn't have to type the name. I can go through and read this next bit and say, oh yes, that relates to something that's relevant. I think that relates to what I've been reading about cognitive improvements. So I'm going to create a new code down here in my phase two coding. It's going to be a new code, and it's going to be about cognitive improvement. Bingo, there it is. So if I have a look here under my phase two initial coding, alphabetically, there it is, cognitive improvement. So I will go through each piece of data that I have, and I will check that check what it has as far as my research, my inquiry goes. What are the questions for my lit review? Excuse me. I will code them. I will note that this should be on topic. I will go through and I will classify it. I will check its properties. So this one, again, I'm not reading through the detail. We'll say, yes, it's about adults. It's about students. It involved a mixed group of people in the US. And for whatever reason, the color red is important. So I've done my classification. What I will do now is go and give it a color mark to say that I've gone through and coded it and I finished with that one for this round. So this is my phase two initial coding. I've found the information that's relevant. I've created new codes where needed. And I have classified it according to the criteria of the country and the cohort. And I have marked it as being on topic for my dynamic set. Any questions?
Robert, I'm just trying to get in my head, sorry, in the coding and the different phases. So in phase two, would I be right in thinking that for my own project, I could actually use the keywords for the different codes?
Yes, you
I'm
could
just
do
trying to
that.
work out the breakdown. Yeah.
So for you, it might be a matter of doing a text search if you're looking for keywords.
Okay.
So searching for, okay, look, one of the things I want to do for mine is find out, are there, actually I want to do it for more than one. So on these ones, I want to find out if mine references children. So I want to go to files and externals, the selected items. Yeah, well, I've already highlighted them, but we'll note them here as well. I can say, do I want it an exact match? So the word children, or do I want child included as well? So depending on how broadly, around the linguistics and semantics of it, but stemmed words, yeah, I definitely want them included as well. And then I want it to go and have a look for me. Are children mentioned in any of these ones? It says that it is mentioned. So let's have a look at the summary. Have a look at reference. Okay, I've got 4 references in this one, 5 references, 1 reference each in these ones. Let's have a look at individual PDFs. So here, 7-9-year-old children is 25.4%. So here I'm seeing the actual word being brought up. So I can simply go through and code that, or what would be smarter is to actually open the document and go through and read it. So prevalence of simple MND in healthy children. And I said, actually, that's not relevant to me. In fact, that's not even on the piece of writing that I wanted. That was on the document prior. So I'm not going to use those ones. So you need to go through and select. But say this one, oh yes, that one looks relevant. Actually, that one is relevant. Then I can just code it simply there and then. Code selection, I'm going to create a new one. This is my phase 2. I'm creating a new top level coding phase 2, which I'm going to call Children's Hospital. So I've used the text search to help me find relevant things, relevant pieces of text for me to look through.
Okay, thank you.
So look, I've opened this one up. But if you're like me, you're getting old, that is small text and hard to read. So another thing to be aware of is if you go up to the top here, right click, undock. So I think you can see that there is a new window that's being opened up, which I can expand and play with now. So that just makes it easier for seeing things and working with individual documents. So am I right that you can see that extra window?
Yes, it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, good. Okay, so highlight text, select a new code, or select and create new code, or use one that has already been made. Now, in looking through the codes that I've been making, I find that there is a mistake that's happened. So if I go back here and open up codes, I will see that there are some codes here that shouldn't be here. Like complicated design, that's supposed to be in phase 2, not just here in the general default position. Sense of community helped shouldn't be here. It should be in my phase 2 coding. These are a couple, this one was just a dummy that I've made. So don't need it anymore. I'll just wait for the computer to catch up. I'm going to right click and delete this one. Just don't want it anymore. Simple. We'd try again, complicated design. Just going to highlight them because that's the easy way to do it. Oh, actually, no, I'll show you two different ways. I'm just going to drag and drop this one. As I said before, use the icon. So I've highlighted it. It should be there under initial coding, not out by itself. So that was highlight, drag and drop. These two, I will highlight, but I'll move them differently. These two, I'm just going to cut. And then I'm going to go here and paste them. So the same outcome is achieved, but as I've said, there's more than one way to do things in NVIVO. So drag and drop is certainly the most convenient, but you can also copy and paste and cut and paste and move things around. So manage sources is what we did the first time, made our notes and the margins. As we've gone through, we've read, we've categorized things, and we've done our initial codings. So here we've got a small number of codes that have been made in our initial reading. Yeah, that looks fine, but what do we do with it? So we could start playing with memos and mapping and things like that. So I'm over on the pane, sorry, I should say phase 2, folder properties. Let me rename that. Maps. I've created a phase 2 folder, and I've started putting some things here, some ideas that might be useful to me. So started playing with some concepts, just creating some concept maps. As you can see, it's nonsense, but there's something there that could be useful to people. Here I've started mind mapping. So some of the ideas that I've seen coming through in my phase 2 coding, I'm just trying to group them and make sense of it. And actually, there's another one I need to add because I've seen that creativity is another domain. So I need to turn it on edit mode. I'm going to insert another sibling idea, so another one at the level. So creativity is another idea that comes here. And then there was a child node under that, which was about creative writing. And another one, which I saw, another child, which is creative drawing. I'm creating a mind map there of how I initially see that things might be developing. And when we come to later phases of our analysis and playing with the ideas and chunking them down and moving around, this is going to be changed. Or I might draw a completely new mind map to help understand where the things are actually going. So you've got those sorts of, tools available as well. Okay, before we leave phase 2, are there any other questions? Okay.
I have a
Let's go.
comment, Robert.
Yeah, go for it, Dennis.
It's clever, isn't it?
It's more clever than I am.
It's really clever. Yeah.
So
There's a question in the chat, Robert.
Oh, my chat's disappeared. Yeah, it's clever. So we have to keep track of what we are doing and make notes all the way through so that we don't get tripped up within it, because it really is an expansive program. Chat, where's my chat?
Yeah, more of a comment than a question.
And he appeared.
Oh, so Toby,
More of a comment rather than a question.
Yep.
Just something I found when I was playing around with the visualizations very briefly, and yeah, I really like being able to pull in the codes directly, because essentially as far as I've gotten the last week is I've been using NVIVO to get through about 9 papers my honours supervisor has assigned me. So going through, trying to code the main ideas from each paragraph, not always able to do that. Sometimes I've got to go down to the sentence level, but being able to pull them into the mind map and I can visually, well, connect the dots is just something my brain seems to respond well to. So I really like that feature.
Okay.
It's fantastic.
I'm not sure that we can pull codes into mind maps, but we can do it the other way around.
Oh.
So create the concept in the mind map and then export it as a code. Okay, I've got my mind map open. I can create as codes or cases. So I'm creating as codes in phase 2. So I can create a code. Oops. Where did it go? So my domains of well-being, with all its subcodes, have now been created as a code set here. But pulling them the other way, I don't think is possible.
So, Robert, if you were using this for, say, thematic analysis
Yep.
of interview data,
Yep.
and you come up with a theme that is based on several codes or subcodes,
Yeah.
you can use this to formulate each paragraph of writing it up, because these are the
Okay.
creativity, these are the topic sentences almost of the paragraphs you're going to use to describe this.
Okay. You are right onto it. A step ahead. If there's more that needs to be said, please come back to it, but we're actually just moving on to that now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to delete what I've just done with the domains of well-being, having brought that in automatically. But I just want to explain first some of the terminology. We've created a coding hierarchy by doing this, where domains of well-being is the parent node to creativity and psychology and spiritual. So these three are child nodes of this one. And creativity and creative drawing and writing are child nodes of creativity. So you've got the children coming down, you've got the parents going up. And when you're going sideways or on the same level, so these two are siblings to each other, and creativity, physical, psychology, social and spiritual are siblings of each other. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 siblings under the parent code of domain of well-being. So that's just some of the language that you need to get. Now I'm going to just delete this one. Close that down and move into move into phase 3, which is where we start to group our codes, which is where Dennis was starting to move us towards. Now, we've got nothing there, but we've done all this hard work in number 2. So let's go back to phase 2, highlight everything, right click and copy it. Let's go into phase 3. Close that down, right click and paste it. Give it time to think. We have now duplicated all our work from phase 2 into phase 3. We're going to leave our phase 2 structure. Okay, sorry, Toby. Yes, the concept map goes the other way. You can take your concepts, you can bring things into your concept map, but mind mapping goes the other way. All our hard work in phase 2 has now been brought into phase 3, but now we will only work with our phase 3 coding tree, which leaves us an audit trail. So if we have to go back and see what we've done, we can see what we did in code in 2, but in phase 3, we can do different things. And then we will copy that into our phase 4 later as well. Now, this is where what Dennis was saying comes into play, or where that mind map could be useful. So we need to start to see, how do these codes relate to each other? So in a way, we've pulled out data. We've identified the things that we want to look at. How do they relate to each other? And one of the problems that often happens with report writing is that things will be serialized. So author 1 says this, and we talk about author 1. Author 2 says this, and then we talk about that. And then author 3. So there's this series. But what we need to be doing is synthesizing. So we pulled all the bits apart. Now we're going to group them according to what seems to make sense for our analysis. So here for me, I think that I need to create a new code that is called psychology. So psychological benefits. So, oops. What are the psychological benefits of Labyrinth? Now, whether they are actual or not is not relevant to me at this point. It's simply what's being reported. So psychology. So reduce dysfunctional thinking should come in under the umbrella of psychology. I can move it several ways. Again, I can cut it, highlight psychology, and paste it. You see, we've got this little tab here that I can open up. Sure enough, there's reduced dysfunctional thinking. It's now a child node, a child code under what is now a parent code. Another way I could do this is encourage ongoing reflection. Yeah, we'll say that's part of it too. I can simply highlight it, click on the icon, and drag. And now I've created two child codes under this one. Now, you'll see that this code has been applied, each code has only been applied once. But under psychology, it would appear that nothing has been coded. It's a parent. So what I need to do is go and play with its properties. Again, right click and go down here to its properties. Nickname, created, hierarchy, name. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I can click on this and it will aggregate these results. Alternatively, I can simply go down to this aggregate coding from children and do it automatically. Now you'll see that the numbers have changed. So every time a child node is created or something else is coded to this child coding, it's going to impact the total that is being recorded for me here as well. So it's going to start building up a hierarchical system of code. So we start to get our hierarchy developing. So just create another one. So emotional well-being, write my description. So what comes in under emotional well-being? Well, feel calmer. We'll put that, drag and drop that. Decreased aggression, well, that's emotional as well. Again, it's not aggregating. Let's go in aggregate coding from child. There we go. This time there are 3 files. It's been applied 3 times. And yep, and then the child nodes. We can open it, we can close it. So feeling calmer is 2, 1, that adds up to 3. Do you have questions? Nope. So that everybody's lost, or
No,
just
I
in awe?
I just had a realization. It's like developing a project with work packages with what you're doing.
The way it's being chunked down in the process. So we
Yeah.
could go, okay,
Yeah.
that's a good way to look at it then.
Yeah, that's good.
Now I just need to check that my codes have gone to the right spot. Find children, yes. Yep, they're all there. Now,
Sorry, Robert.
I just
Can
point out, before I go to your comment, Toby, you'll see if I go back to phase 2, it's still there as it was with its structure. But phase 3, it's starting to look different. So our analysis is getting deeper and more complex, but actually we're starting to simplify the story that we're wanting to tell here as well.
Wow.
Toby.
Thanks. I'm just really interested in the way you copied those codes over to another folder. So am I understanding correctly so say for one code that you've copied, there's a phase 2, say, cognitive improvement code and a phase 3 cognitive improvement code?
Yes, they do exist, but we're only going to work with the phase 3 ones.
Okay, but what I think I'm seeing there is you can go back to, you can take a step back to your initial coding before you, say, removed things, put things in hierarchies, if you need to. Okay.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is when we get to our 4th phase, is we're going to copy everything in phase 3. So assuming we've gone through and done a lot more than I've just done there, I'm going to copy that, go into phase 4, just close that. Where's paste? There's paste. Give it time to think. Always watch this little white bar at the bottom. Oh, there we go. So now we can play with this and condense it even further. So it's a matter of preserving the audit trail through our different phases, creating memos that go along, what you're thinking, what you're discovering, what your questions are as well. Let's have a look at a query. So let's work here. We've got our phase 4. Everything's looking really pretty. Let's have a look at our coding. So here I'm going to undock it just so I've got more space to see things. Okay, let's find the circumstances under which we have coding to, now I'm going to go to our phase 4. I'm going to say, let's have a look at the things coded under emotion. Having a look at all the files and externals, that's just not an issue at the moment for us, and run the query. So it's telling me, let's go for the summary, that there are three references, 3 documents that have been coded and for under that emotional umbrella. And I can find out exactly what it is that was coded. There's the actual text, or I can have a look at it in the context in which it was coded. So I'll just open this one. And I can see there's the actual text that I was coding. So that helps me track down where the things are that I've been playing with. Just checking you can still see it. Text searches we've had a look at. We can do our maps. There's not an awful lot of data in here to play with yet, but we can set up a chart looking at our coding. Create a chart code. That what's most coded for. Looking at our files. What's that one? Yeah, it's not going to be much come up. There's too few there. It's not coded an awful lot as yet. But these, for this particular document, we've got a visualization of the coding that has been applied. Now, some of these haven't been used. And this is the amount of text that's covered. So on topic, that's the whole of the document. These ones are 12%. And we can see here that I should have filtered out to say we just want the phase 3 ones, not the phase 1, 2, and 3.
So this also would assist in terms of the write-up is to which themes were more important and which were less important.
Yes. Plus, if you have a look at the, let's close that down. As you have a look here, you can see the number of times that a chunk of text has been coded. Now,
Yes.
when you get further along, the number's going to be a heck of a lot bigger. And you'll see
Yes.
which ones come out at higher, with higher frequency. So this is the number of files, and this is the number of chunks of text. So it might give you different, you will interpret it differently depending on how the numbers fall. It could be that, you know, there are 100 chunks of text that have coded to emotion, but they all occur in 2 references. So as far as investigating emotion goes, they're the 2 references to look at. But overall, it may not be important against the whole of the literature.
Okay.
But having refined our coding tree, now what I would like to do here is, if I was going through this further and doing this properly, I would have a set of coding here that looked at the explanations that we're given for here as well. So that would be an extra part of the coding tree. And then as Dennis has identified, what we can then do is use it for our write-up. So I would click on emotion, which is clearly an important concept. These are the bits of text. I can click on the hyperlink and go directly to the document itself. And when I'm writing about what's been said about emotion, then I go in and pull out the bits of text and use them as quotations, if that's relevant as well.
Wow.
Robert, there's just a comment from Anna in the chat box.
Thank you. The backup and reference page. Anna, can you explain to me more what you're meaning by that, please?
Yes, sure, Robert. What I mean, because I was listening to you about moving from phase 2 to phase 3. So phase 2 is the initial coding, and then you copy and paste that, and then move into phase 3, and then you have the parent codes and the child nodes. And then if anything occurs during phase 3, if something is lost, or so to speak, and let's hope it never does happen, but if there is an issue within phase 3, you can go back to phase 2.
Yes.
So that's what I meant by that.
Okay, yes, no, you're understanding it correctly.
Oh,
it
good.
also provides for you evidence that you have been working through this rigorously.
Yes.
And if an audit trail is required, you can go back and see the steps that were taken.
Yes, okay.
So in as much as from 2 to 3, we've had some condensing of the number of codes and starting to make sense. By the time we get to phase 4, we're going to have just a few codes with the child codes under them. So we might end up with 5, 6 in phase 4 if I followed this through in detail to completion.
Right.
So 1, we go and make sure that everything is fine and on topic and text accessible.
Right.
Number 2, we do our initial coding.
Mm-hmm.
In 3, we'll create the hierarchy.
Right.
And then 4 will start to make sense of it. So number 4 is very much more interpretive.
Okay. All right. No, that's thank you for that. It puts it right in my mind now. So thank you.
Now, there's something else that I wanted to raise, which may be of value to you in your approach to your project. It may be that as you read through your material, you think this is really good what these authors have done, but they've got all this extra material there that they haven't dealt with. Or maybe there's some extra material there that I can use and differently to what they've done. So when I was doing my PhD research, I was reading all these papers about attitudes to human reproductive cloning. And as I was reading it, I was discovering that it was qualitative research, but there were quotations from research participants included in the literature. So it was providing evidence for their conclusions. But I saw that if I pulled out the direct quotes that they included, I was able to apply my coding framework to the research participants' comments. So then I had my standard literature review, and then I had this extra pool of, I think it was about 23 different quotes from I don't know, say 15 different journal articles that I could then also go and apply my analysis to as well. So then I got 2 sets of data. So I was able then to say my literature review has revealed that this is what was known, and this is why they think things are the way that they are. But the literature review has also revealed additional data that I have analysed in this particular way, which also confirms what was being said, but also adds an extra dimension. So if you would find that useful, then I'm suggesting that you set up a separate code to identify things for later analysis. So when I'm going through these labyrinth documents, one of them in particular said, this is the feedback we got from the kids. It's not a high-level paper that was, social scientifically. It wasn't done in huge detail, methodologically speaking. But it includes anecdotal. It includes some anecdotes, which I am able to copy or to code, and then later on I will apply my analytical framework, and then I've got additional information that I can use as well. So I can say this is what is known and this is what is discovered, plus this was what was included as the bonus material that I can learn some extra things from. So a pooled analysis or some other sort of analysis may be of relevance and of interest, and just expands the value of what you are discovering as you read through all these countless documents, or at least it would feel like they're countless at times. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Robert. So are you saying that, say a child made a particular statement, it was coded in the first study as a statement about something, but you've found more in that comment, so you could also, right.
The way that it was being used by the author is different to the way that I want to use it.
Oh, okay, great.
So I can use it, so I can approach it and say, this is part of the evidence provided by this author, and it fits into my coding in the emotional support aspect. But I can see when I apply my framework that it also speaks to the idea of family.
Mm.
So I'm using information publicly available, it's published, all of that, and I can apply it in a different way and draw some additional conclusions.
Oh,
So I'm
that's
not
great.
invalidating what was done previously, but I'm just maximizing the benefit of what I'm finding in the literature in front of me.
And also there might have been, since that study was done, they may have discovered new themes, or there might be new research to find something. Yeah, that's great.
Yes. Now, thanks, Toby. One more really nice tool I haven't shown you yet. Let me swap screens. I think that was, yeah, we'll get to any questions in a minute. Oh, share screen. Okay, I'm opening up beneficial, no, I'm not opening up the wrong thing. I'm going to open up one of my coded files. Here it goes. Oh, it's that one again. Okay. Now I'm going to just undock it. Oops. Now, just make it larger. You'll see this little picture here. These are coding stripes. Coding stripes will become your friend. I'm going to select, I'm looking at codes. I want to go to my code, phase 4 codes. I see the highlighted ones, the ones in bold are the codes that are relevant to this particular document. So I want to see, I don't want the parent code here, I just want the child. I want to see where this has been coded for. Now, see over here on the right, these are the codes: decreased aggression, stress, anxiety, and beneficial. Now, decreased aggression has 2 little spots here because there are 2 parts of text that have been coded to decreased aggression. But if I look at this relevant code, then the whole of the text has been included there. Now I can say, okay, increased aggression is the one I'm interested in, but I just hit the wrong button. Increase, I could say that, I mean, it's pretty clear it is correct. But having identified it, I could say, actually, no, that's not right. So what I'm going to do is just right click on it. And I'm going to uncode. And you'll see there is now only 1 green spot. Verbal aggression is only coded for at 1 point. It also means if you've got a large document, you get the stripe, the coding stripes activated, and then you can scroll through until the code comes by. It's an easy way of locating text that you've got coded in what is otherwise a large document. So let coding stripes become your friends. They will help you find lots of things and keep track of things. And they're useful for, especially for uncoding as well. So I have to recode that. I'll highlight it. I'm going to use a recent code. No, it wasn't coded recently. So I'll go to my selection. I'm working in phase 4. That was under emotion, decreased aggression. There we go. So I've recoded it. Green stripes reappeared. There is a heck of a lot more that NVIVO can do for you. I'm happy for questions to come through if you think I can be of help, but hopefully this will help to give you a strategic way of approaching your literature review and a way of being able to maximize the information that is available in the literature review that you can extract, and then a way of synthesizing that information as you condense all your codes into meaningful clusters that will inform your writing. But the only other thing I would mention is that when you're using your memos, we've got memos. Oh, no, there is one other thing I want to show you. as you go through your reflections, write down the things like you've done this analysis, write down a paragraph that summarizes your analysis. You may then be able to just copy it and paste it into your report that's going to turn into your thesis or your project at the end. So make sure you go for that as well. Okay, yeah, the one thing I forgot to show you, you will find it very helpful if you are systematic in the way that you go through and write a description of your codes. At the end, you can create a code book. So is this one not opening for me? Why is that not opening? Here we go. I've created a code book to pull out all the definitions of my codes. So I'll just show you how to do it. I'll close this one down again. Close all the extra material. Okay, so I'm down in formatted reports. I've got a code book here. Just delete the thing. These others are predetermined. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to format a report via the wizard. I want my code. Next. I want the name of the code. And I want the description of the code. And if there was a type, so if you were grouping your codes, you might use that. But just the name and the description's what we need at the moment. I hit next. Do you want to filter? No, we're just going to go next. Yeah, I want them both. Highlight them both. Bring them across. Third individual. Why is that not coming across? Do you want to add any grouping levels? Oh, sorry, I should read what I'm doing. No, I don't need to add grouping levels. Now, I'm just going to tell it what order I want them to appear in my report. That's just the appearance, whether I want to have fancy colors, whatever. I'm going to call it code book tests. I know to delete it later. It's the code for blah, blah, blah. Of course, you will write it out formally and properly. Double click on that. Again, too blooming small to read. Do I filter results? No. I want to undock. Give it a minute. And I can export this, export results. And I can see the codes that have been used and where I've put in, so all the codes that I've created and where I've been good and I've written the definition, that's recorded for me. What I would suggest is that you work out what will be the shape of your coding definition. Newman, I think, suggests 7 different inclusions in your coding descriptions. To work out what the shape would be, included in a memo so you know what you include, what you exclude. And then every time you write a description for your code, you follow that definition, you print out your code book, you've got it all there, you just export it and include it, if you need to, as an appendix at the back of your thesis. So that's the code book tip for the day.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. I think we need to finish up soon. Last questions. Anna had to leave.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Excellent.
Hope it's useful. There's so much more in there, so much more detail, but it's easy to get lost. I think I've given you the basics that you can use to start and hopefully have enough confidence to play with some of the other things. And I'm at the uni. I'm not too far away if I can be of any assistance.
It was great, Robert. It was great. Thank you very much. Really useful.
I just wanted to say, Robert, that there's a iPark over on the left or on the right as you're approaching Coffs Harbour Uni, so I can walk past our sacred garden every morning under the big trees.
Yep. Yes, I know that space rather well. Yeah. No labyrinth. Oh, and there is a labyrinth down there. That's right. Yes.
Thank you.
Any final comments?
No, just thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Hope it's
I'd like
helpful.
to say thank you as well. Yeah, very powerful stuff, and just the presenting the idea of using this software and approach for a literature review in the first place. I feel this may have just you know, saved me for this honours year.
And if you use it for your literature review, you will be sufficiently familiar with it to be able to go ahead and analyze the rest of your data. You'll learn the techniques that you will use many of the techniques that will be useful later as well.
So many functions and options, really, isn't there? Just my own curiosity, you know, we use YouTube a lot for tutorials and things. If people want to go further, Robert, do you know if there's much on YouTube?
I believe there is. Also,
Yeah, just something.
Thank you for the reminder. Lumivero, that's the company that owns NVIVO, has lots of tutorial assistance and lots of explanatory stuff. And also you will find that there are little links, whatever, embedded in the various panels that open up in NVIVO as well. So you can click on them and get summaries and information and how-tos. So there is lots of material there as well.
That's really good. All right.
I found the online help files pretty good as well.
Yeah.
nsr.nvivo.com or something.
Good to know. All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending. It was very, very informative and fantastic. Robert, thank you so much. I will send out a recording to everyone later. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your attendance.